For those that I have not met, my name is Colin Doggett, and I serve as head of our project management at CPI. And at the end of this call, if you have further questions on how project management is taken with OPA or with any other suite of products that CPI could help you implement, please feel free to reach out to myself. For a lot of organizations, bringing on a new tool such as Oracle Policy Automation can be very daunting. And for your PMO, there's also a little bit of unknown in the sense of, what is the overall impact to the organization? And that's what we want to talk a little bit about today, and some of those things you can do to empower to be more advised in how you approach projects with Oracle Policy Automation and overall be successful with them. So, this comes down to about four key areas. One being, first and foremost, defining your scope. One thing that you can find is that with Oracle Policy Automation, there's a lot of capability at your fingertips, and if you're not careful, scope creep is something that can occur as you engage with the business and then with team members, and they start to see that capability. It's very easy for there to be scope creep, especially when you're approaching your very first project. And going into things with eyes wide open is incredibly important, especially to be clear with your business stakeholders on what the scope is in order to complete a project on time, on budget. And ultimately, there's always that ability to scope future projects or future sprints into the Oracle Policy Automation. Some of those key areas are defining the scope in document form, holding discovery sessions with the business. A lot of customers we work with, Oracle Policy Automation is typically replacing, paper forms or PDFs that have been used in the past, or it's being used to actually automate a process and to help do the discovery tasks that someone might have to engage a person for traditionally. Creating a plan, some organizations will fit the older waterfall methodology, where we're defining a project linear in the form of a calendar. That is a recommended approach with Oracle Policy Automation. We can do sprints as well. Sprints are a little more difficult in the form of getting a project stood up. After a project is stood up, sprints are a great way to be successful in adding modification or capability to a project that may be deployed. Another great thing to keep in mind is that with a new tool, sometimes there may be a need for a process we call journey mapping, or what you may have heard is referred to as customer journey mapping. And this allows you to go through the process that your customer or your business unit may be exposed to from start to finish in order to explore all of the influence that the project might have on a group or a singular individual, and making sure to plan for that accordingly. Contingencies. This is definitely a critical step in being successful with OPA. Uh, with a very first project you may take on, there will be a lot of unknown, especially if you decide to do some of the implementation independent of an implementer such as CPI. There is an element of education that will come into play, and we would encourage you to plan for this accordingly. Pad your schedule, give yourself some extra time in order to have those contingencies planned for, and not have to come up to the end of your timeline and ask for more time, which isn't always the best outcome. And last but not least is an executive summary of your overall project plan. For a lot of organizations that are participating on the call today, you haven't implemented OPA to date. And what we encourage is, you want to stay engaged with your executive team. One thing that OPA does is it has a lot of influence on customers and your business units from the stance of it is a frontline tool, in that the forms and the interviews that you might be creating typically do get seen by your end user or your customer. And it's very important for all parts of the organization to understand that it's not just a behind the scenes IT tool. And as the analogy always says, time and money, everything is possible. Uh, Managing the scope and the expectations of your business are incredibly important to staying on budget and on time. Kicking off, your project discovery is incredibly important. And for us at CPI, we encourage two exercises in order to be successful with Oracle Policy Automation. One is what we refer to as wireframing, or what's called as blueprinting sometimes in the industry. And because this is a very visual tool that is graphical in nature, it is incredibly important for you to share with your business or your customer that you're working with, what you're going to be delivering to them in a visual form. And wireframing and blueprinting allows you to, make modifications, adjust as things come up or as people have an opportunity to review those. It's much easier to do that in a graphical tool such as PowerPoint or some of the online platforms that are available. Much cleaner than if you were to try and do that in the Oracle Policy Automation tool after the fact. And the second critical path item in the discovery is data mapping, or capturing those data attributes that you're going to be utilizing in your experience. And this is for two reasons. One is that a lot of times with Oracle Policy Automation, we're wanting to capture that data within a downstream tool such as Oracle Service Cloud or Eloqua or other product suites that house data and database. We want to make sure that we're mapping that well in advance of the actual creation of the project, and that we're accounting for those naming conventions in order to maintain a standard for our organization or for ourselves. The reality is that you may not be, while you may create the project, you may not be the owner of it long term, and you need to make sure that your standards communicate effectively to those that will maintain this into the future. And last but not least is, the final three elements that are key to being successful. Functional testing. This is core to any IT project or any business project, is that we're allowing, from a functional delivery standpoint, we're conducting testing and creating test cases, but we're also allowing the business to do that. And one critical element for Oracle Policy Automation is that we have the ability to capture test cases in a structured format within an Excel document, and we can actually run those automatically through the tool set and produce results that allow us to see if anything is broken. But what that allows us to do as well is that, as changes occur during future sprints, during your release of the project, is that you'll have those test cases on record and available to you to run back through the application in order to validate that nothing has been broken in the process of making updates. Change management. This is really critical from the standpoint of traditionally Oracle Policy Automation is delivering new or changing functionality, and you need to communicate often to your stakeholders that the change is coming, and making sure that they understand what's going to be included in that. And then overall, launch is not the end of the project. A lot of times for a PMO, that is the end of our project, but there is going to be a handover to a party or parties that are going to manage the delivered project for the life cycle of it being live for your organization. And with that is, functional design documents are a critical path to making sure that delivery and management is successful into the future. At this point in time, we actually have a number of questions that have been submitted, and we're going to take an opportunity to answer some of those. I don't have the name of everyone that's made submissions. Some of them are anonymously, but we'll go ahead and kick it off with our first question. And that is, if data isn't stored in OPA, how does the resume function work? So that's a great question. The the piece that speaks to is Oracle Policy Automation in itself is a tool for front-end decision process evaluation. But the one thing it doesn't do is it doesn't store data long-term. It does, though, store the data that is part of the interview experience that your customer constituent is taking. And what this question speaks to specifically is the product feature called checkpoints. And checkpoints are the capability that if you have an interview or a project in Oracle Policy Automation and it's a long experience, there's a chance that someone could exit the user experience before they've completed the evaluation or the project. And what checkpoints do are they allow someone to come back and credential back into the project or the experience and pick up where they left off. And the way that's accomplished is that checkpoints can exist on any part of the Oracle Policy Automation experience. And you can have as many checkpoints as you need within that experience. If someone were to exit early, we actually save an XML, and that gets stored on the OPA hub, which is in the cloud. And we assign an ID to that experience, which can be recalled at any time in the future. And what this allows is that someone that has filled out a number of data elements, we can actually recall those back into the interview experience. So that's a fantastic question. Thank you. Our next question comes from Anonymous as well, and it is, what is recommended if you have multiple systems and would like OPA to call into and retrieve data? And that's a fantastic question too. So a lot of times what we see is that there are customers of ours or users that use Oracle Policy Automation, and they want to make calls into other data sources to populate data for that constituent or user that's going through the experience to help make their decision. And one really neat part is Oracle Policy Automation does have the ability that if you have a downstream data repository or data system, we can actually make web service calls through integration and actually pull that data into the experience, as well as if you want to write data downstream to a data repository, that can be accomplished through Oracle Policy Automation and a little bit of configuration and development effort. So fantastic question. We'll give it about 2 more minutes to see if we have any additional questions asked. But if you don't have any other questions, we definitely appreciate your jumping on this call this afternoon. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. At this point in time, we do not have any additional questions. We'll be making this recording available on our YouTube channel, or please reach out to me if you have any further questions. Thank you, and this ends our call.